Hey everybody, I'm SCHEELS Pro Josh Douglas, and I just wanted to take a second real quick and talk about my 3 favorite setups with some of my 3 favorite baits and ones that were pretty important to me. Kind of a light, medium, and a little bit of a heavier action rod. We'll start out with this one right here. This is a Marabou jig. It's actually an Outcast Tackle fighter fly, and it's a bait that I first learned how to fish my home lake, Lake Mille Lacs on. When I moved up to Lake Mille Lacs right away, or even when I was traveling up from the city, this was the bait that I was throwing right away in the spring, and kind of taught me a lot. You know, of course, a tube and stuff is how you learn how to smallmouth fish, but this bait in particular taught me so much about, you know, smallmouth eyesight in clear water and how good they are at seeing. They have terrific eyesight, and unlike a largemouth that uses lateral line, more ambushes, a smallmouth's got great eyes. And a little thing like this, little Marabou jig like this, mimics a mayfly hatch, which traditionally, whether you're a walleye fisherman or a smallmouth fisherman, mayfly hatches are generally a tough time to get bit unless you can figure out a way to mimic the mayfly, and this is a great way to do it. A little Marabou jig. Actually, it's a Canadian presentation that's been brought down to the States, and just a terrific way to catch northern smallmouth. The key to the setup, though, is you need a special, or the key to the bait is you need a special setup to throw it, because it is so light. You know, it's a 3/32 hair jig, Marabou on it, and the key, you want to throw it a long way in that clean water, so you really got to have a nice setup for that. And for me, I'm using a G Loomis. This is an IMX Pro, and it's a 901, so it's a light action rod. You know, it's got a lot of bend to it, which does 2 things. One, most important, it allows me to cast this bait a long way. You need to match that with the lightest braid you possibly can, and this is 8-pound Power Pro, just 8-pound Power Pro braid. I don't want a lot of resistance coming off the reel. And then I'm using a Shimano Stratic, just an all-around staple in the Shimano line. But awesome setup. Again, this one that I just can't wait for the spring, for the ice to break and start running out there and start throwing a Marabou jig, especially after the spawn, when those mayflies are hatching heavy. When everyone else is complaining at the boat ramp, we're smiling because we're catching big ones on a hair jig. My next one is one of my favorite all-around setups that I've ever used. It's actually my favorite spinning reel setup ever made. And with the bait that's near and dear to me. I catch most of my smallmouth on this right here. For the longest time, this bait had my personal best smallie, which I just broke not too long ago. But this is just an Outcast Tackle. It's a little 1/8 ounce GoldenEye, which is a bait that I got to develop and then watch it become successful. I know a lot of people caught their personal bests on this thing, and basically fish eat fish, right? So it mimics fish. It's a little GoldenEye swimmer, just a little biospawn 3.25 inch swimmer on the back of it, little paddle tail swimmer. And you know, I might vary it in size. I could be throwing 3/8, 1/2 ounce, bigger baits throughout the year, but when you're throwing this right here, it's just an awesome way. I can fish it high in the water column, I can fish it midway, and I can also fish it down on the rocks where the smallmouth are picking off stuff. But my setup for it is my favorite, and honestly, this is like the setup that I would use 80% of the time. Of course, I have like 901s and stuff like this that are specialty rods for throwing super light stuff, but this is the brand new G Loomis NRX Plus, you know, one of their flagship rods. Very top of the line. It's the 872S jig worm rod, which is a 7.3 medium action, and it's a pretty hard medium action. It's got a fast tip with a lot of butt behind it, a lot of power in it. I can throw Ned rigs, I can throw tubes, I can throw largemouth drop shots, all that on this rod. It's just if there was one rod that I had to keep for a spinning setup, this would be the one right here. And I'm using a Shimano Accents 4000. It's my favorite reel. Again, very high end, and Shimano's known for just pumping out some of the very best products in the industry. And I'm using 10-pound Power Pro SSV2 to whatever size Seeger and Vizex leader that I need. Generally, we're talking 8, 10, and 12-pound tests. But you know, I'm at my happiest if I'm fishing a tournament or just out fun fishing. If you see this rod and reel in my hand, especially throwing a little Kitech, I'm catching fish and I'm having fun doing it for sure. My next one is a bait that's near and dear to me, and it's near and dear to me because this is the bait that kind of got me fishing for bass as a whole when I was young, And it's just a swim jig. This is an All-Cast Tackle Pro Swim Jig. Super versatile bait. You can cast it and swim it, you can kill it, you can flip it, you can skip it, you can do really whatever you want. Generally you fish it just like a spinner bait, so it's kind of, you know, takes a lot of the guesswork out of fishing. You're casting it and you're reeling it back. Mimics a little bait fish, like a little bluegill, something that works around Minnesota on literally every lake that we fish. And it's just the bait that, it's my confidence bait when I'm fishing for a largemouth. If I'm having a great tournament, it might be on a swim jig, and if I'm having a tough tournament, I'm probably throwing a swim jig, because that's my confidence, and confidence is definitely the best thing that a guy can have in his tackle box. The rod that I'm using is a G Loomis IMX Pro 863 swim bait rod, SWBR, which is pretty perfect. It's made for throwing swim baits like this that are a little heavier when I need to get away from the spinning rod, 3/8, ½ ounce. So it would make it a great candidate for the swim jig, which is essentially the same thing. It's just got a skirt on it. I'm throwing a Shimano Chronarch MGL, and anything in the Shimano line that has an MGL spool is going to cast amazingly far. It's an essential for me. Generally, I'm always using an MGL spool, and the Chronarch's one that's throwing it. And then generally, I'm using about 15 pounds Seeger and VizX fluorocarbon. But again, this bait right here, I've caught so many largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, northern, you name it. I've caught it all on it. But it's just a killer. It's subtle, but it's also a great way to power fish. So those are my 3 setups that are close to me. I always have them on. If it's the season and I'm fishing for smallmouth with those first 2, or largemouth, I'm always going to have those on my deck ready to rock and roll. So I definitely urge you to check them out.